What's going on, guys? B Scott here with you, and on today's show, we got your running back sit starts. Ahead of week 5, I'm going to have all your running backs start, sit, streams for every single matchup. I'm going to go through every single matchup, tell you who I like to start, stream, some must-start guys, and then obviously some guys that are on the fence with that you might be having to start. So keep it locked and loaded right here at the first 4 downs. What's going on, guys, and welcome back. As I mentioned in the preview, we're going over your running back sit starts. Ahead of week 5, every single matchup. I'm going to go through each individual matchup, look at every single player at the running back position, tell you who I like to start, to sit, to stream, and then obviously some risky plays at the running back, especially running back 2s that have some tough matchups this week. So before we get to today's content, don't forget, like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell, all that good stuff, and then comment. If there's a running back you want to hear more about or have any more questions, drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to give you my opinion. So let's dive right into it. The first matchup we're going to be looking at Thursday Night Football. Los Angeles Rams on the road against Seattle Seahawks. Darrell Henderson, must start for me. Honestly, one of my starts of the week. Looked good last week, albeit even being limited a little bit with his injury, but Sony Michel is an afterthought in this offense at this point. 14 carries for 89 yards, 5 receptions. Darrell Henderson's the man, plain and simple. He's playing well. Going against Seattle defense that's been really bad against the running backs. Most rushing yards, most receiving yards to the running back position. Third most fantasy points to running backs overall. So obviously Darrell Henderson smash spot for me this week. Should have a good day here on a short week, albeit you got to watch the health. He's still dealing probably with a little bit of his ribs, sore ribs, but if he's out there, smash spot, I think he's going to be a top 10 running back for sure this week. And then on the flip side, Chris Carson. Questionable for this game. Honestly, come out, he's a game time decision at this point. So I'd be looking elsewhere. Chris Carson in back-to-back weeks, finished under 50% snap share. He's dealing with something, and according to the reports, it's a neck injury of some sort. We don't really know. He's a game-time decision. I don't like it. It's not a good spot. Alex Collins, this is a guy, if Carson was to be ruled out volume-based, I like Alex Collins. Last week, you saw the amazing touchdown. A couple great moves he put on some San Francisco 49ers defenders, found the end zone, 10 for 40 and a touchdown. So Alex Collins is a guy that I would be probably plugging and playing here if Carson was to be out. It's still a tough matchup, but the Rams on the season, allowing 4.7 yards per carry to the running backs. The defense just hasn't looked as daunting as it has in recent past. It's looking like they've got a few holes. So I like Alex Collins as a plug-and-play, volume-based RB2 if Chris Carson were to be out of this matchup. Now we look at the London game. New York Jets on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. Mike Davis. This is a guy that I've been on the fence with. He's been a low-end RB2 flex-type option, honestly, the entire season. Coming to this game, the Jets giving up the most fantasy points to running backs, plain and simple. I like Mike Davis in a smash spot here. I think he's garnering more of the carries, more of the load. He hasn't really impressed, but I'm telling you this week, it's a good day for him to probably find the end zone. You're looking at 50 to 80 yards probably rushing. Could find a 100-yard game here against a poor Jets defense that really has defended the wide receivers quite well, to be honest. Two receiving touchdowns, but the running backs just giving up a lot of holes. And then Cordero Patterson, it's a must start, plain and simple. He's worked his way. You've seen it. Honestly, on the limited snap share that he's playing, he's still producing at a high level. 3 touchdowns. You saw it through there. Made some amazing catches, to be honest, too. So I like Cordero Patterson and Mike Davis in this matchup. Both these running backs should be your lineup this week. On the flip side, Michael Carter. I can't really trust it, to be honest. I know he's the RB1 for the Jets. He's running ahead of the other running backs. He's getting a decent amount of volume, but he hasn't produced yet. Nothing outstanding. 13 carries, 38 yards, and a touchdown last week. He just hasn't played great, but this isn't a bad matchup necessarily, so I could see it definitely low-end RB2 value if you have to plug and play him, especially in deeper leagues. I think he could still hold some value against an Atlanta defense that hasn't looked necessarily great on the season. So Michael Carter, a risky RB2, maybe in deep leagues, you got to start him, but Mike Davis, Cordero Patterson, smash spots here. The Detroit Lions on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. You're starting Dalvin Cook, plain and simple. There ain't much to say about it. Second most fantasy points to running backs. That's what Detroit Lions giving up. So Dalvin Cook, obvious start. Had a bad day last week against a good Cleveland Browns defense that's finally looking to get it together. But Dalvin Cook, a must start this week. DeAndre Swift, also a must start. He's seen the volume in the receiving game. Now, yes, it was kind of weird and awkward that Jamal Williams out-carried him last week. 14 carries for Jamal Williams, 66 scoreless yards. I don't know. That was just a weird situation, but I still like DeAndre Swift here. He's getting it done in the receiving game. He still gets carries in the red zone, and plain and simple, you're going to be starting him against a Minnesota defense that hasn't necessarily been great, to be honest, giving up 11th most fantasy points to running backs, 4th most rushing yards. So I'm starting DeAndre Swift here. Also, Jamal Williams. This is another guy low end flex value on a weekly basis. That's where you're going to probably have him here. If he finds the end zone, he's going to give you his most value. But, 5 to 7, maybe 10 PPR, full PPR fantasy points, that's an option for Jamal Williams. But I'd probably be starting him here in a game that there could be a lot of points to be had. Minnesota's defense hasn't looked great. And Detroit's team, the defense especially, you know how that works out. So this could be a high-scoring affair. I like both these running backs as possible options this week. And then we got the New Orleans Saints on the road against the Washington football team. Alvin Kamara, you're starting him. You're starting him no matter what, albeit just 10 receptions in 4 games. If you were to tell me that Derrick Henry, at this point in the season, in week 5, he would have more receptions than Alvin Kamara, I would be calling you a liar. But that is the truth. So Alvin Kamara, I don't know what's happened. They kind of flip roles. He had his most carries, career high, just last week. And you got to be starting him here, honestly. Washington football team allowing just 4 yards per carry, allowing 5 receiving touchdowns to the running backs, though, most in the NFL. So I like Alvin Kamara on an obvious start. If you drafted him, you're going to be starting him on a weekly basis. Hopefully, he can get that passing usage up, especially this week against the Washington football team that's susceptible to that. And then on the other side, Antonio Gibson. You're probably going to have to start him here. It's not a great spot. You saw Saquon Barkley in the receiving work game. He finds the end zone. Had a good day, but still, the rushing is tough to come by against this Saints front. Plain and simple, allowing just 3.1 yards per carry to running backs and the 8th fewest fantasy points. So Gibson, not necessarily a smash spot here, but if you got him, you probably got to be playing him. He does have the receiving potential, even though they haven't used it much lately. And I think this game is really going to be a neutral game script on both sides. So I like Gibson. You're probably going to be firing him up either way. And Kamara, obvious start. Now New England Patriots on the road against Houston Texans. You're starting Damien Harris here. This is a must-start, smash spot for me. Honestly, 9th most fantasy points to running backs, allowing 5 yards per carry to running backs. The Houston Texans are. So obvious start. Yes, the last 2 weeks, you saw Damien Harris's numbers take a huge dip. They played 2 great defensive fronts. And we know that Damien Harris doesn't necessarily get the work in the red zone. But between the 20s, he's your man. He's a guy that can take it to the house. You saw 20-plus yard touchdown 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So obviously, Damien Harris, a huge start for me this week. I think the Patriots are going to be able to handle the Houston Texans, plain and simple. So give me Damien Harris. Must start this week. Should have a pretty good day. On the flip side, the Houston Texans, I can't trust any of the running backs, plain and simple. No one's standing out. They're all mixing and matching. Mark Ingram, Philip Lindsay, David Johnson. You take your pick. I'm not taking any of them. They're all sits this week. Now we're going to look at the Miami Dolphins on the road against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're not starting a Miami running back at this point. I'm not starting Malcolm Brown. Can you? I don't blame you. Obviously, Myles Gaskin, nowhere to be found. 12 snaps last week. That's it. 2 carries, 3 yards. He's droppable at this point, considering they obviously don't know how to run the football. Plain and simple. So, Myles Gaskin, no thank you. You're not starting Malcolm Brown anywhere in any leagues. On the flip side, Tampa Bay, I like Leonard Fournette here. Honestly, if Gio Bernard's out, Leonard Fournette is easy RB2. Plain and simple. Miami's been susceptible to running backs, giving up 100-yard days all day long. Leonard Fournette last week, 20 carries, 91 yards, 3 receptions for 57 yards. And Miami's given up the 4th most fantasy points to running backs. So Leonard Fournette has really overtaken Ronald Jones, plain and simple, for the early down role and the receiving work, especially if Gio's out. So if Gio's out, I'm starting Leonard Fournette. Must start for me this week. In Miami, no thank you. Green Bay Packers on the road against Cincinnati Bengals. You're starting Aaron Jones, plain and simple. You drafted him as a top 10 running back. You're going to be starting him, even though Cincinnati's allowed 3.3 yards per carry to running backs. Not great on the season. They've been pretty good against running backs as a whole, so not a great spot here, but you're starting Aaron Jones. On the flip side, Joe Mixon, if he's healthy, you're starting him. If he's not able to go, give it a go. Samaje Perine, I think, is a volume-based play here. Green Bay allowing just 3.9 yards per carry to running backs, actually been pretty decent, but we've known in the past they've really struggled against running backs, and Perine's is just pure volume. You're looking at the Bengals have looked towards a more balanced attack on offense, plain and simple, this season. They haven't really tried to put Joe Burrow in the position to be throwing these balls 40, 50 times. So Samaje Perine is a guy, if Joe Mixon were to miss, that I would probably be plugging and playing here in a game that could see some points scored either way. Now, in my opinion, Perine's a kind of low-end RB2 flex-type guy, but still value based on volume. Then we got the Denver Broncos on the road against Pittsburgh Steelers. Not a good matchup for any of these running backs, but you're starting Najee Harris, plain and simple. It's not a good matchup. Denver allowing the fewest fantasy points to running backs, 7.7 per game. That's the average. Really, really good against the running backs. But Harris is coming off a pretty good day. 15 carries for 62 yards and a touchdown. His highest total on the season. He's not really averaging very good, 3.4 yards per carry, but he's getting it done in the receiving game, plain and simple. It's pure volume. You're starting Najee Harris, set it and forget it. Easy RB2, low-end RB1, based on the production that he's getting. And then on the flip side, Melvin Gordon. This is the one guy I probably trust here in this matchup. Pittsburgh, allowing 4.4 yards per carry to running backs, but still just the 6th fewest fantasy points and 0 touchdowns to running backs on the season. So not a good spot here for Melvin Gordon, but he's getting it done effectively enough, I would say. Obviously, splitting right down the middle with Javonte Williams still. And Javonte Williams shows flashes of explosiveness, and then it kind of fades away. So I like Javonte Williams going forward, don't get me wrong. And if for one of these guys were to get hurt, it would turn either one of them into huge RB2 options on a weekly basis. But Melvin Gordon, if you got to start him, I understand. I feel like he's going to get the best case for red zone work in the offense. So Melvin Gordon, if you got to start him, I understand. But honestly, I would probably lean towards sitting these running backs for Denver. Philadelphia on the road against Carolina Panthers. Chuba Hubbard is a smash spot for me. This is one of my must starts of the week, plain and simple. Philly, giving up 6th most fantasy points to running backs, 2nd most yards, giving up 4.8 yards per carry on average to the running backs. And Chuba Hubbard, I think, is going to lead that team in early down work. Obviously, he might lose some touchdowns to Sam Darnold. We've seen it, obviously. Sam Darnold leading the league in rushing touchdowns. Can you believe it? I can't either. But Chuba Hubbard is a smash spot for me this week. I think he's going to have a big day. I think Philly could possibly struggle in this game. So give me some Chuba Hubbard. I think he's got solid RB2 production this week. And then on the flip side, Miles Sanders, I can't trust him. Not against Carolina front. 4th fewest fantasy points to running backs. Just 8 receptions to running back on the season. Total in 4 games. That's the fewest in the league. So I can't trust Miles Sanders considering he has 9 carries over the last 2 weeks. And they just don't seem to like to run the football, I guess. They don't know how to run the football, so they don't even try. I like Kenneth Gainwell, but not starting this week. I'm sitting Sanders. I'm sitting Gainwell this week. Tennessee Titans on the road against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You're starting King Henry every single week. Derrick Henry is a must-start. Last season, 2 games against Jacksonville, 2 200-yard games. So it's a smash spot here, obviously, especially considering Ryan Tannehill. He might be out without his pass catchers once again. So you're starting Derrick Henry. It's plain and simple. Actually, Jacksonville's been a little bit better to the running so far against running backs this season, but you're still starting Derrick Henry. Set it and forget it. On the flip side, James Robinson, guy that you got to get in your lineup. Plain and simple. Averaged 5 yards per carry last season against these Tennessee Titans in both games, and you saw it last week. They're finally giving him the workload that is needed to be able to be effective in splitting your offense down the middle. You want to run the football and pass it on a good ratio. James Robinson, 18 carries, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns last week. As soon as they started running the ball with him, that offense started to open up. It opened lanes for Trevor Lawrence to run. It opened passing lanes, Laviska, Marvin Jones Jr. So I like James Robinson here in a must-start against Tennessee defense that just hasn't looked the part, especially in the recent past. They just lost to the New York Jets, man. Could you imagine? I just can't do it. So James Robinson, obvious smash start for me this week. Cleveland Browns on the road against the Los Angeles Chargers. You're starting Nick Chubb every single week. Set and forget it, plain and simple. Los Angeles Chargers allowing 5 yards per carry and the 5th most rushing yards to running backs on the season. So it's an obvious start for me, Nick Chubb. I think it's going to be a huge day. I think him and Kareem Hunt, both valuable on any given week. You're starting both of them here, even against a fast defense like the Chargers, but they're susceptible to running backs. So I like both of them. On the flip side, you're starting Austin Eckler. Looked great against the Raiders on Monday Night Football. He does it all. Cleveland, though, giving up 2nd fewest fantasy points to running backs, and that's David Montgomery, Dalvin Cook, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Some decent running backs that they had to deal with. Nobody great, but still, they're playing very effectively, and the defense is only getting stronger. So you're not sitting Austin Eckler, but this could be a tough day, and it could be a long one for that Chargers team. Now, Chicago Bears on the road against the Las Vegas Raiders. David Montgomery, he's out. Damian Williams, dealing with possibly a quad injury. We'll have to wait and see. We're waiting for the injury report. But before today, if he's out there and playing, you're starting Damian Williams, plain and simple. 7th most fantasy points to running backs, 4.6 yards per carry to running backs. That's what the Las Vegas Raiders have given up. And the Bears, I think, running the football effectively opens up the pass game. And Justin Fields has been announced the starter for the rest of the season going forward. So that bodes well. I think Damian Williams could have a good day here, a solid one, a decent RB2 day. Is, barring him being healthy. And if not, Khalil Herbert, that's his name, 6th-round pick, I want to say. If both these guys are out, obviously we know Montgomery's out, but if Williams were to miss, Herbert could be a deep option as a flex-type guy, maybe low-end RB2 numbers, if you got to take a chance right there, if you're a David Montgomery owner and you need a running back. So on the flip side, Josh Jacobs, practicing. He's looking like he's going to give it a go, honestly. Dominated the touches on Monday Night Football. I think that's going to just continue. So obviously I'm starting Josh Jacobs here in not necessarily a great spot, but You got to be firing him up here with the amount of touches he's getting. Chicago giving up 4.3 yards per carry to running backs. And I could see Josh Jacobs finding the end zone in this one. So Josh Jacobs, an obvious start for me this week. Now we got San Francisco 49ers on the road against the Arizona Cardinals. Trey Sermon, you're probably starting him here. It's a good spot if Elijah Mitchell was to miss the game. If Eli Mitchell's available and is going to be playing, I have a hard time starting either one. I guarantee both of them are probably going to be seeing a decent split here. Eli Mitchell's missed 2 weeks, dealing with a stinger in his shoulder still. Who knows if he's going to be healthy if they're both active. You got to say it. Eli Mitchell's the guy. Arizona giving up 5.2 yards per carry to running backs. That's ridiculous. Only allowed 1 touchdown, though. But still, the offense has to run through the running game, especially if Trey Lance is under center. So give me Eli Mitchell if he's healthy. If he's inactive, give me Trey Sermon in an RB2 volume-based setting, plain and simple. On the flip side, Chase Edmonds, he's getting it done, plain and simple, without a touchdown. Still a top 20 running back on the season. You're starting him every week, especially in full PPR. He's looking great. Must start every single week. James Conner, touchdown-based running back, but he's getting touchdowns. Back-to-back weeks, 2 touchdowns. San Francisco allowing 11th most fantasy points to running backs. So James Conner, I could see you starting him here, plug and playing. We knew going into the season that he was going to be touchdown dependent, but he's getting touchdowns, and he's getting the red zone carries when they matter. So James Conner is a guy that I would possibly be starting here. I think there's going to be a lot of points to be had in this game. Could be decently high scoring. Arizona's defense, even if it shows up, they're just putting up enough fantasy points. You want to be tied to these guys. So James Conner, possible flex type guy for me this week. Chase Edmonds, you're starting. It's an obvious one. Now we got the New York Giants on the road against the Dallas Cowboys. You're starting Zeke. He's looked great, plain and simple. 140 yards and a touchdown. Looking like the old Zeke, in my opinion. Obviously, he's lost a little bit of his step with the speed. I could see that. He did get tackled from behind on the breakaway touchdown. But he's still there. He's still managing huge fantasy days. Top 5 option. You're starting him all day here against the Giants defense that's allowed 4.7 yards per carry to running backs. Haven't been great. So you're starting Zeke. It's an obvious one. Saquon Barkley, you're going to be starting him here. You see the reception work's upticked over the last couple weeks. They're missing pass catchers. And Dallas, honestly, only giving up the 5th fewest fantasy points to running backs, but in 0 touchdowns to running backs. But they've also allowed the most receptions to running back and the 3rd most receiving yards. So I like Saquon Barkley here. He's looking good too. He's not getting it done necessarily on the ground, but pure volume and the receiving work, you got to have him in your lineups. And then Tony Pollard. Obviously, on a weekly basis, you're probably starting him with low-end flex appeal value, plain and simple. He has the ability to break away one big game. He has the ability to get a touchdown on a weekly basis. That's where his huge value is going to come. I still think he's a safe play for, 5 to 7, 5 to 10 tops fantasy points in PPR. But obviously, you throw in a touchdown, and then he can have an even bigger day. So if you got to flex him, I understand. Low-end value, just based on his floor. And we got the Buffalo Bills on the road against the Kansas City Chiefs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, this is not a good spot for him. Back-to-back weeks with 100 yards and a touchdown. I get it. He's played good. But he's going against a Buffalo team that's, it's plain and simple, just no joke. Buffalo's allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running backs, and they've been playing very, very good on defense. So I don't necessarily know if I can trust Clyde Edwards-Helaire here in a tough matchup. He's had back-to-back pretty easy matchups. So I don't know if you got to sit him here. I understand he's played great. So I understand even firing him up here. I would just be a little bit weary and understand that, hey, it might not be a great day for CEH. On the flip side, Zach Moss is the guy that's getting the high opportunities for touchdowns, plain and simple, in the red zone. That's why I like him here against the Kansas City Chiefs in a potential shootout. Now, yes, Singletary's carrying the ball at a heavier rate, but Zach Moss is getting the carries when they matter and the receiving work in the red zone. So I like Zach Moss as a possible option this week, just based on where his valuable touches are coming from. So give me Zach Moss in a game that could be high scoring, plain and simple, on a touchdown basis. If you need a deep running back in a pinch, Zach Moss is an obvious guy for me this week. And then we got the Monday Night Football game, Indianapolis Colts on the road against Baltimore Ravens. You're starting Jonathan Taylor, plain and simple. Over 100 yards for the first time on the season with a touchdown, 3 receptions for 11 yards. Nyheim Hines almost non-existent this last game. And I think Marlon Mack, he did get 10 carries. I think they were just trying to showcase him a little bit, hopefully give him some trade value. That's in my opinion, because he's looking for a trade. They're looking to trade him, but no one's really saw him play. So they want to at least see what they can possibly get in a Marlon Mack. But obviously you're starting Jonathan Taylor. It's a tough matchup. Baltimore's defense is pretty darn good, plain and simple, but they can be run on. And they've given up a lot of short yardage touchdowns, 5 short yardage touchdowns on the season. So give me Jonathan Taylor. You drafted him. You got to be starting him this week. On the flip side, there's not a Baltimore Ravens running back I love. I can't believe I have to say this, which is incredible, but there's not one I love. Latavius Murray. If you want a low-end option, Indianapolis has been pretty decent against the running backs. So if you want a low-end option, Latavius Murray's the guy you want. He always has an opportunity to fall in the end zone. Had a lot of carries for a little bit of yards last week. Nothing outstanding, but he's getting it done, plain and simple, as a low-end RB2 option. Obviously, huge touchdown dependency there. So if you got to take a chance with Latavius Murray, I understand. But in week 5, I would have never thought the Baltimore Ravens, there wouldn't be a running back I really wanted to necessarily roster on this team, which is incredible to say considering they led the league in rushing for the last 3 years. So Latavius Murray, a low-end option this week if you really got to take a chance with it. And then Jonathan Taylor, you got to be starting him. So anyway, that's been your running back sit starts. All the running backs that you could be asking about in any matchup. And if there's a running back that I didn't necessarily hit on or talk enough about, drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to get back to you. And once again, if you like the video, subscribe, share, thumb, bell, all that good stuff. That really helps me out. I really appreciate it. Really trying to grow this channel and do everything I can to help you guys out in your fantasy league. So for the first 4 downs, it's been B. Scott, and I'm out.